All right, today we're going to start our next unit, which is all about electrons and chemical periodicity. So in this unit, we'll learn how electrons are arranged within an atom, and then chemical periodicity, which is the periodic table, so something like periodic law, and we'll look at trends of the periodic table. All right, so to start off, we're going to start just a little brief history of the periodic table. Okay, so again, you don't need to write this down. Dmitri Mendeleev, he's the guy that gets credit for kind of starting what our modern periodic table looks like, although there's some controversy. The rumor is Dmitri Mendeleev stole a lot of work from previous people and didn't give them the credit they deserved, yet somehow he's the guy that gets the credit. Okay. So he created kind of the basis of the modern periodic table in the 1800s. At that time, only 70 elements-ish had been discovered. So he took these elements and he organized them based off of their atomic mass. And then when he did that, he noticed that there are similarities in both physical and chemical properties between elements, and so he put those elements side by side. So here's a picture of Mendeleev's table. Okay. So if you notice, it's the same elements that we know of today. Okay, just missing a few. Bless you. And then these numbers, bless you, are representing the mass. Okay. So he has the mass numbers written down, and then if they're side by side, they share similar properties. So like beryllium and magnesium, they're side by side, so they have similarities. Okay. Another interesting thing about Mendeleev's table, he left question marks. So these were elements that just haven't been discovered at the time, but he knew they existed. Now, nowadays, is our periodic table arranged by mass number? Nope, it's closed, but what number is it actually arranged by now? Good, atomic number. Okay, so our modern periodic table, it's actually arranged by atomic number. And then if we read it, I'd say we read it like a book. So if we go from left to right and then top to bottom, do you notice how atomic number always increases by 1? Okay. So when we arrange it by increasing atomic number, we see these regular intervals where atoms have similar chemical properties. Okay. So here's a picture. This is what the periodic table actually looks like. Okay. Notice on our paper copy and even my poster on the wall, do you see these bottom 2 rows? Okay. Those actually fit in right here. So those are the 2 like shaded purple-ish colored rows up here. So they actually fit in there in the periodic table. Okay. It's just when we put it like that, it makes it really, really long, like obnoxiously long where it doesn't really fit well on paper. And those are pretty much our radioactive elements. We don't use them often, so it is literally pulled out solely to make the periodic table condense nicely onto a piece of paper or a poster. Okay. But this is what it actually looks like. And so when we arrange it that way, elements with similar properties, we say they occur at regular intervals. They're in the same column. Okay. So if elements are in the same column, the way it's arranged is they're going to share similar properties, or they're going to behave similar. All right, so when we look at the periodic table, we know that some elements are reactive and some are really stable. So I have some hints here of what elements are super reactive versus what's a stable element. So in this first picture, it's Hindenburg, which is filled with hydrogen gas. So hydrogen is extremely reactive. And then the second picture is the Goodyear blimp, which is filled with helium gas, which is not reactive at all. So the question is why? Why are some really reactive while others are extremely stable and non-reactive? About the electrons. So electrons and how they are arranged determines the reactivity of atoms. Okay. So write this down. This is the first thing that you need to write down. Okay. So in chemistry, we're interested in studying how atoms behave. And so if we want to know how atoms behave, not only do we need to know just the number of electrons, but we need to know how they're actually arranged within the atom. That tells us the behavior of the atom. So then this unit is all about the electrons. Okay, so we'll learn how do we know like how electrons are arranged within the atom, and then we'll talk about, based on their arrangement, what does that mean for their properties. So maybe about a month ago, do you all remember you made those History of the Atom posters? Okay, so one group had the Bohr model. So Bohr is not the most updated model, but it is one of the most popular, and it has a lot of like correct and true information still. So here's Bohr's model of the atom. So in the middle is the nucleus. And then Bohr is the one that said electrons move like in these perfectly circular orbits around the nucleus. Okay. So they just orbit the nucleus. If they gain energy, they can jump up in energy level. Okay, so they could orbit on that like path. Or if they lost energy, they could drop down in energy level and orbit on this ring. Okay. However, in 1926, this one was replaced with the quantum mechanical model. Have we talked about the beehive analogy? Okay, so to explain the quantum mechanical model, a good analogy used is to think of a beehive. Okay, so everyone picture a beehive in your head.
Oh, yeah, I do.
Okay, maybe I made you close your eyes. Okay, picture the bees swarming the beehive. Okay. What do the bees look like?
Random.
Okay, random, right? Did anyone picture bees perfectly circling the beehive?
No.
Okay, so unlike these nice perfect orbits, we now think electrons move around a nucleus kind of like bees in the beehive. So quantum mechanical model is used to describe like where those electrons are found or the arrangement of those electrons. I didn't bold this one, but go ahead and copy this down. I think we need it. So quantum mechanical model describes the arrangement of electrons in an atom. Okay, so when we learned the quantum mechanical model, and we're interested in learning about how electrons are arranged throughout the atom, we use three terms to describe where these electrons are. Okay, so the three terms that we use are terms called the shell, the subshell, and the atomic orbital. Okay. The bold, yeah, well, do you see like the bold? I would get all the bold words down. Okay, like those three big words that need to stand out to you are shell, subshell, and atomic orbital. So that first word we use is the shell number. Okay. It's also called the principal quantum number. If you were to read like a chemistry textbook, it's probably going to call it principal quantum number. Shell number is shorter. Okay. And all you need to know for the shell number is it just tells us the energy level. Okay, so the shell number is the energy level. So each shell gets a number n, so n for number. And n can be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. As n increases, the energy of the electron also increases. Okay. So that means like shell 1 is the lowest energy. Okay, so 2 has more energy, then 3 even has more energy, 4 has more energy, and so on. Okay. Throughout this unit, we'll look at different types of diagrams of how do we like diagram electrons. Notice n equals 1, this is our lowest energy level, so it's like the lowest on the page. Okay. N equals 2 is more energy, so do you see like this box is higher up? N equals 3 is more energy, even higher. So sometimes we'll show them like at different points on the page to show as n increases, so does the energy. All right, the next word we use is something called the subshell. The subshell just describes the shape of the electron cloud. So in your notes, you just need to know that subshell is describing the shape. And here's the picture of all the shapes. I'm going to show you these up close on my future slides here. So we're just looking at what shape is the orbital. And so for subshells, we just describe them with one of 4 optional letters. So our letter options are S, P, D, and F. Okay. So for right now, get down S, P, D, and F. And then in the future, like meaning just a couple slides, we'll look at, well, what is the shape of an S subshell, a P, a D, or an F? All right, and then that third word we use to describe electrons is the atomic orbital. What you need to write down is this third bullet point. Okay. So orbitals, they're just these volumes of space around the nucleus in which electrons of the same energy move. So it's basically like the actual volume of space the electrons occupy. So then up here, here's some pictures of what some of these different orbitals look like. Okay. The one thing I want to point out, these kind of almost look like balloon shapes, right? Like if I were to hold balloons, do you see they kind of look like balloons? Okay. There's not like an actual physical barrier though, like a balloon would, that actually holds electrons in place. Okay. So there's not like some physical barrier forcing electrons to stay in this space. However, Are there like forces that hold electrons in an atom? Charges, right? So the negative charge of the electron is attracted to the positive charge of the nucleus. Okay, so there's not like a physical barrier that holds them there, but we do have those electrostatic charges is what's going to actually keep them nearby. Okay, so now we're going to look at the relationship between our sublevels and our orbitals and electrons. Okay, so each sublevel or each subshell contains one or more orbitals. So go ahead and get this section down in your notes. So the S subshell or sublevel has one orbital. And I'll show you, on my next slide, I'll show you a picture of that. Okay. The P sublevel has 3 orbitals. And again, I'll show you pictures of what those look like. The D sublevel has 5. And then the F sublevel has 7. All right, then for each orbital, it can only contain a maximum of 2 electrons. Okay. Electrons have what kind of charge? Negative. Do 2 negative charges want to be near each other or spread out? Spread out, right? Like charges repel. So you can only have so many electrons in this space because naturally they want to repel. So there's only a max of 2 electrons per orbital. So now we're going to do just real simple math. So if the S sublevel has 1 orbital and there's 2 electrons per orbital, how many electrons can be found in that S sublevel? What's 1 times 2? 2. Okay. So the S holds 2 electrons. The P sublevel has 3 orbitals, and you can have 2 electrons per orbital. So what's 2 times 3? 6. Okay. So that P sublevel can hold 6 electrons. The D sublevel has 5 orbitals, and how many electrons per orbital? Say it out loud. 2. Well, 2 per orbital, per 5 orbitals. What's 2 times 5? 10. Okay. So the D orbital holds 10 electrons. And then the F sublevel has 7 orbitals. How many electrons per orbital? Bless you. 2. What's 2 times 7? 14. So then that F sublevel holds 14 electrons. So here's a picture of an s orbital. So the s orbital is a sphere shaped. The quantum mechanical model is purely based off math. So the computer generates an image that looks like this. So where we see like more density or darker regions, it's a higher statistical probability that we find an electron in this space. Where we see a lower density is a less likely probability of finding an electron in this space. And so if we look at the shape that is made, it looks like a sphere. And there can only be 2 electrons maximum per orbital. So 2 electrons just move very randomly within this volume of space. Next, we have our p orbitals. I call these dumbbell shapes. So there's 3 of them. So one lies along the x-axis, one lies along the y, and one lies along the z. Again, 2 electrons per orbital. So there can be 2 in here, 2 in this space, and 2 in this space. So 2 plus 2 plus 2 adds up to 6 total in the p sublevel. These are the d orbitals. I call these 4-leaf clovers plus a donut. So again, 2 electrons per orbital. So 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 is 5, or 10. So 10 electrons are held in the d subshell. And then finally, these are the f orbitals. Again, 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 is 14. So the F subshell can hold 14 electrons. Okay, so now this is why I wanted you to pull this up, because this chart is small. If you can pull this up in front of you, I just want you to follow along with me. There is nothing to write down for this one, but this is kind of a review of the shell, the subshell, and the number of electrons. We are just going to skip orbital designate. We don't need that column for today. Okay, so follow along with me. So pull this up on your iPad if you need to see, because it is small. So our shell number is our energy level. So shell number 1 just has 1 subshell in it, and that happens to be S. Okay, so it's 1 S. And how many S orbitals are there? Just 1. That 1 sphere shaped. Okay, and how many electrons fit in an orbital? 2. Okay. So there's just one orbital, 2 electrons can fit. So the first energy level can only hold 2 electrons. All right, next our second shell can hold 2 subshells. So it can hold the s and it can hold the p. Okay. How many s orbitals are there? 1, right? That one blue sphere. How many p orbitals are there? 3. Do you remember seeing like those 3 purple dumbbells? Okay. How many electrons per orbital? 2. Okay. So the s has 1. So what's 1 times 2? 1 times 2 is 2. And then what's 2 times 3? 6. Okay. So then add them up. 2 plus 6 is 8. So the second shell can hold 8 electrons total. Okay. All right. Third shell can have 3 subshells in it. It has the s, the p, and the d. Okay. How many s orbitals are there? 1. How many p's? 3. How many d's? 5. Okay. And how many electrons per orbital? 2. So what's 1 times 2? What's 3 times 2? 6. And what's 5 times 2? 10. Okay. So we add them up. 2 plus 6 plus 10 is 18. So that third shell can hold 18 electrons. And then the fourth shell holds 4 subshells. So we get the s, the p, the d, and the f. How many orbitals are there for s? 1. How about p?
3.
D? 5. And f is?
7.
Good. Okay, how many electrons per orbital? 2. So what's 1 times 2? 3 times 2?
6.
5 times 2? And 7 times 2? 14. So if we add up 2 plus 6 plus 10 plus 14, we get 32. So the fourth shell can hold 32 electrons.